So recently, someone close to me asked, how do you know that what you're doing is the best thing? How do you know that what you're doing couldn't be better? How do you know that you couldn't feel better? First of all, great questions. And thank you for asking them, because I'm going to take the time in this video to flesh that out a little bit. For those of you that don't know, what I'm doing is eating exclusively a fruit and vegetable diet, predominantly fruit, small amount of soft leafy greens, and slightly more of the fruity type vegetables. Been doing that on a spectrum for around 3 years now and feeling pretty good, or much better than I used to. So let's break it down a little bit. So I'm just going to premise this video by saying I can't prove anything to you, nor can anyone else. I've said it before and I'll say it again, and probably say it in every other video I ever make, but you can only prove things to yourself. And when I say that I know something, it's because I've experienced it myself and I know it to be true. So this journey that I've chosen has been more about me disproving my past ways of doing things than it is proving what I'm doing now. Of course, the longer you do something, the easier it is for one to forget how one used to feel, which is why journaling can be such a powerful tool. But anyway, so I've felt pretty damn good doing what I'm doing now, but I also know how bad I have felt and how bad you can feel. So it's all about proving to yourself, as I said, what the truth is. And there really aren't any other options. And that's something that I've figured out for myself. I've tried most other ways of doing things. I've tinkered around with my diet through the years, starting, well, properly back when I was still in primary school, with the routine naturopathic advice of, getting off dairy. I had a lot of sinus issues, pretty involved in the head area, still am to some extent, but through my experience of like going on all grapes, for example, I know that can be cleaned out pretty effectively in not too long a time. So it started with getting off the dairy for one. That's probably the first thing you want to eliminate. I had a lot of, as I said, sinus issues. I was sniffling constantly. It was driving everyone around me up the wall. And honestly, it was too long ago to say whether it worked or not. But my money's on it not have working, because we ended up reverting back to dairy. There were soy products and whatever brought in to substitute, but that wasn't cutting it for me at the time. And it's not something I would recommend. Just dairy or dairy substitutes just isn't something that you need. No animal in this world drinks milk after it's weaned, and it's just asinine to think that we're any different. We lose the lactase enzyme for a reason, which is the ability to digest milk proteins. And that's where your babies start to get all colicky and mucousy, whooping cough even, along with some other adjuvants and irritants. But that's why dairy is extremely mucus forming and acidic in the body. Even just looking at milk, you can kind of see it's not the most digestible thing. It kind of just looks like warmed up mucus in a way. Great for building up a baby real quick, and that's what it's used for. But then you want to get on your species specific diet as quick as possible, which for us, if you haven't figured out by now, and I'll explain it a little more, but that is fruit. And because we live in an adulterated reality, we may from time to time have to add in some other things for a multitude of reasons, social reasons, emotional reasons, financial reasons, you name it. Anyway, getting off track a little bit again. So the dairy was the first thing, brought it back in, as I said. My diet never really changed substantially until, I want to say about 7 years ago, after I watched The Game Changers, funnily enough. I'm not going to dive into that at all, but basically it was enough for me at the time to question what I was doing, both from a health and ethical standpoint, and cut out the meat. I didn't replace it with anything or adjust anything else, and it resulted in me feeling extremely tired, fatigued, unmotivated. And because I didn't know any better, I ended up bringing the meat back in. Turns out I was just detoxing from all the stimulating effects that animal flesh eating brings, which can definitely be worked through in a systematic way if you know what you're doing and you eat the right food. So that was the first go at it. And then things started to go more pear-shaped, whatever that really means, because personally I think pears are awesome. I think the next phase of my diet journey was where I really started to go hard on the bulking up, eating as much as possible. A lot of meat, a lot of grains combined together, which is a big no-no, but almost every Western meal combines those two things. That's why we see so many problems. But the wheels really started to fall off during this time. I was having more injuries. I think I've mentioned before, I had some pretty scary back injuries, rotator cuff, so shoulder injuries. Obviously the training I was doing at the time played a massive role in this, but when you eat the way I was eating, your body is going to be inflamed pretty much all the time, and connective tissue isn't going to be real strong. So injuries were a dime a dozen, and eventually it was enough for me to take a step back again and seriously go on this journey by myself and try and figure out what the truth was. And that's what I'm still doing now. So that was over 3 years ago, probably 4 years ago now. I experimented with a short water fast. That ended in full body itches, which really freaked me out. And that's when I really knew for myself, because I experienced it, that there was something more to this. And I was extremely ignorant to the truth, and that there was going to be a journey to embark on to figure out why that happened, because it wasn't something that was mentioned in the ebook that I got from the YouTuber that put me onto this in the first place. Funnily enough, it contained, I should say, I'll say more of the conventional fasting advice of breaking with bone broth and that kind of thing, which I wouldn't recommend. But there was a lot of good info in there as well, along with the training, the importance of rest, definitely not drinking tap water when you're doing just a water fast. If you are, I would heavily filter it. Get a good test kit, get a TDS meter, remove as much of the chemicals as you can, and take some time off work. That's a big one. I did mine over a weekend, and the morning of the third day was pure hell. As I said, it was full body itches like nothing you could ever imagine. I couldn't sleep. I was visibly inflamed and red all over. I had people questioning me at work. I don't even know why I went, to be honest, but that's a different emotional thing. Eventually, no, actually I did stay the whole day, but I didn't do any work that morning, I remember. And this is around the time where keto was a big thing. I don't know whether it still is. I don't look into that at all. But it was something that I experimented with for a time because that's what I was doing at the time. When all these symptoms broke out, I thought it must be the keto. And while yes, I don't recommend keto and it has a lot of its own problems, that wasn't the cause of what I was feeling. But I was on the right track. My thought at the time was, this reaction must be due to a lack of carbs. I haven't had carbs in 3 days. I need to smash whatever sugar I can. So my first water fast, I broke with a packet of Allen's lolly snakes. Just absolutely inhaled that from the workshop vending machine. And then Smoko came around. Luckily enough, they had a little packet of fruit, just like a mixed bag of fruit, which was the optimal choice. And then lunch came around, walked down the road, got a hamburger and chips, and then probably had a steak or something for dinner. I don't know. But my symptoms didn't exactly subside straight away. From memory, it took almost a week for that whole body itchiness and tingling to completely go away, which was super strange to feel. I guess that's kind of what a drug addict feels like coming off something. Which is definitely what I was feeling. But I expected it to go away instantly, which it didn't. And just goes to show again that I was ignorant, as we all are and continue to be. But now we know there's a lot of acid involvement there, a lot of fungus due to the grains and everything else that I was eating and most other people eat. Fungus produces uric acid, which is what you get that like pin needle itchiness feeling. So there's definitely a lot of that. And then, let's speed this up a little bit. I guess I started taking veganism more seriously. I've never labeled myself as a vegan. If you want to use labels, good for you, but I don't think it really serves any purpose. Veganism is more of a political movement than anything. And although I agree with a lot of it, I'm definitely not one to go on marches or protests, although it definitely does sadden me to see what continues to go on. When someone asks me what I am, because they need to put a label on it, most of the time I just end up appeasing whatever label they want to put on me. But basically what I'm doing is following nature's laws, eating a species-specific diet, and reaping the rewards. As Kev Ramon says, I only eat fruit because nothing else makes sense. And the longer I do this, the more I find that to be true. So then my next big download or awakening was doing a 3-week juice fast in the March, April of 2023. That ended up in me just drinking watermelon juice just for the simplicity and how cheap it was. That was probably the most energetic I've ever felt, or the least obstructed, I should say. That's something I'll dive into as well. May as well dive into it now. Most people think, and this is true to an extent, that you need to eat more to have more energy. And while that may be true, if you're eating the right foods, in my experience, the opposite can also be true. Have you cleaned out your vessel enough to experience that true dynamic cellular energy as opposed to a stimulated cellular energy. When you're only drinking or eating extremely hydrating carbohydrates and there's almost no fat in your diet or protein, then everything just flows, can permeate through cell walls. It can do whatever it needs to do super efficiently because there isn't any slimy, gunky fat in the way, obstructing things. That's basically what diabetes is. It's a dietary fat problem, not a sugar problem or an intake of sugar. It's the intake of sugar on top of the fat that causes your chronically elevated blood sugar. So you remove the fat and probably within 2 weeks or so, I'd say your diabetes would have reversed. This has been proven many times, but you can only prove it to yourself, as I said. So if that's something you're struggling with, cut out everything but the fruit you eat. And if you're not eating any fruit, start and get back to me. So after that fast and experiencing what it's like to not really have to sleep much, just waking up in the morning and just feeling on and ready to go was something I've not experienced before, and it was quite disconcerting, and it still is. My energy fluctuates more now that I'm eating properly again, but it's always a bit of a shock to experience something like that. And there's this need to almost feel pulled back down to earth and ground, and that's what you can use the denser foods for, even the cooked foods if you're really in a spot, to slow things down, to ground yourself, especially towards nighttime if you struggle to go to sleep. But it's a different type of energy compared to what most people are experienced with. You're not pinging off the walls like a 7-year-old child at a birthday party who's had too much fairy bread. It's the kind of energy that I've explained before, where you feel like you could either meditate for hours on end or run an ultra marathon. And to have that, and I guess it was tacit in the way I explained that, but there's this presence of mind where you feel like you have the choice to do either. It's like you can consciously choose to pull back, be the observer, and choose your own destiny, basically, which is pretty cool. And it's something that also needs to be trained through repetition with meditation, which is something I also highly recommend. But now we're coming closer to the present day, and I do more acute little experiments like maybe upping the fat. Most recently, I had a 30 to 35% fat day based on calories, which in my opinion is the proper way to measure your macros. Most of the time I'm following a Doug Graham style 80-10-10, which is 80% calories from carbs, and then the 10 and the 10 is the fat and the protein, obviously. That's, in my opinion and in my experience, on the high end, without eating any overt fats like avocado or nuts and seeds. Durian maybe, if you're in a tropical environment. You will really struggle to reach the 10 and the 10 for the fat and the protein. It's more like 95-5. But anyway, even then, there's going to be a massive difference between eating 5% fat in a day compared to 30 to 35. And every time I do this and my emotions start to get away from me, and you start having salads, and then if you're not conscious, you kind of get on this hamster wheel, things go downhill, You start introducing more and more things, and then it reaches a point where your body reacts. It tells you no, you're doing the wrong thing, you're going against nature's laws, you're going to pay for it, learn this lesson, or suffer. So once your body's cleaned out enough, you can feel these inconveniences, and then it's up to you to take it in to learn the lesson, which a lot of people, I would say, feel that, and it's a bit of a buzzword almost, to listen to your body and listen to your gut and your intuition, but is anyone really doing that? I think there's an argument to be made that they're not. But anyway, as I said, the cleaner you get, the more aggressive these reactions can be, and the more obvious it is that something's not right. And then the fact that it corrects itself so easily once you return back to the proper way of doing things, it's pretty clear evidence. It's observable, it's measurable, and it's repeatable every time. So that's truth to me. So that's pretty much it. I've come full circle now. Just continue to do what I'm doing. You don't have to do what I'm doing indefinitely. It's more of a spiritual path that I'm on now. As I said, to eat anything else doesn't make any sense. But if I really wanted to, and I do on occasion, lash out and I can have some cooked food. One of my mentors says it this way, that you clean out the vessel enough and you do the work so that you can have fun and experience these cooked foods and other culinary delights where it's not going to hurt you. Doing anything once isn't going to make a dent, although in my experience it does show up and manifest itself, but it's not going to cause any chronic problems. It's when you consistently break nature's laws and go against her will and her plan for us that you start to pay for it. And it's up to you to recognize that and turn things around. So if you haven't tried this path already, I would say, why haven't you? There's no excuse. You can't tell me it doesn't work if you haven't done it. Prove it to yourself. Even just for a week. Eat like a monkey for a week. Although bananas probably wouldn't be the best thing for detox anyway, but it could be a good balance between not detoxing too heavily and detoxing too much. But something is better than nothing. Just up your fruit intake in general. Make the first meal of your day fruit only. Ideally, in the morning, hydrating fruits, maybe some melons. Get things flushed out. Start from there. If you really got problems, then you might have to dig in harder, go deeper, use some herbs, and maybe even some coaching. So if you want to start this journey, see what it's like, begin to reverse what ails you, and you want some help, then just ask, reach out. I'll be happy to give you some advice, and we can get on a call and sort something out for you. So I think I'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.